Hey everyone, welcome back to the Other Side podcast, where we recognize that our 6th grade Sunday school theology is no longer good enough for this world in which we live. It's far too ambiguous. There are way too many questions to be answered. So traditional answers aren't good enough anymore. And so I am one of your hosts, jbirkey, and I'm joined as always by Caleb Hires, and we are looking at these hard to reconcile issues and wrestling with them willingly and openly, looking at them from different angles and different perspectives and through different lenses to come out with a better understanding and hopefully advance the kingdom and learn to have better conversations. I want to apologize for any decrease in audio quality for this one. We did have some technical difficulties, and so we are making the best of it to get this content out there, because this was an episode that we did not want to just kind of throw away. So what we are talking about today is time management. For a quick reminder that our format is we want to wrestle with passages of scripture that have become tangled and maybe misinterpreted. We want to answer your questions. We want to have guests on that are relevant and that matter to you. But we also want to talk about practical and real issues that we're facing as well. And so something that has been burning on our hearts recently is this message concerning time management, how we all feel like we don't have time to do anything. But before we get into that, I did tease this a couple weeks ago, and I do want to give Caleb a chance to share a story from his latest trip to Israel. So Caleb, take it away, man. I want to hear your top story from this latest trip to Israel.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a really hilarious, we thought we were being persecuted story. You want to hear that one? Yeah, but it actually wasn't that, but it sure looked like it, and you'll know why. Yes, so we do this parade through Bethlehem, and we have guitars and banners and 70 plus people marching through Bethlehem, just shouting and hooping and hollering and singing peace and love and all that stuff. And we do it every year. We've been doing it for like 4 years now. But it's quite a sight, and it becomes a spectacle, and like everybody's live streaming it, like all the people there, they're just like stopping what they're doing, watching us do this big parade thing. And it's always been really happy and fun. But this year, there was an individual that starts shouting and dropping the F word and being very boisterous and trying to get a crowd involved to stop us from doing this. It sounded exactly like what you're probably thinking a Palestinian enraged person would sound like. And so the only word in English I understood was the F word. and the word you after the word F word you, and yeah, and so, but this individual got so mad and even put his hands on me and the other guitar player, trying to turn us away and stop us. And so it's a little intense because we don't know what's going on, and this guy's very angry, shouting, and no one's really joining him, but he's very mad looking. And so we're like thinking, oh God, I'm thinking, okay, what are we going to do? And so we have a guide there, things like that. He's talking to him in Arabic, they're talking, everything like that, but we don't get a lot of information. We just keep going, And so a few minutes later, after he's still shouting at people in the back and everything, I grab my friend, who's a dear friend of mine, and I'm like, hey man, what is going on? What is wrong with him? What's happening, And he says, he is mistaken. The guy is mistaken. He thought we were a gay pride parade because some of the girls had rainbow colored flags. And so he thought we were promoting homosexuality in the heart of Palestine, in Bethlehem. And because he was so mistaken and so convinced, he could not be talked down. So my friend who helps us had to get the police and everything. So we had to make it very clear to the whole group, like, listen, you are not being persecuted for the gospel. You were not being, attacked by the devil or anything. You were literally It was a mistake. This guy was mistaken and so angry he couldn't be talked down. So yeah, it's kind of hilarious.
Yeah, man. Hey, it's funny that you would bring that up. It reminds me of something that one of my good friends, Roger Freivolt, has said regarding people who think they're being persecuted for the gospel and almost boasting in that and taking great pride in that, and really they're just being an offensive person, like like people who take out their Bibles and put it on their desk in an environment where they know that it's going to create conflict, or being overtly like being overwhelming about their faith around people who really have made it clear they don't want to hear about it, not waiting for the invite. And he's like, if you're doing that and you experience conflict as a result, you're not being persecuted for the gospel. You're being persecuted because you're a jerk. And not that you guys are being jerks, but it's just funny. It's funny, similarly to your group over there, like wanting to get excited about being persecuted for the gospel. I was like, no, wait. You're being persecuted because they thought that you were participating in celebrating homosexuality. Let's not get this confused. Something that I did want to ask you, as we know over the last several years, as President Trump's position toward Israel has been very favorable, very pro-Israel, and he's taken some steps to establish things there that haven't been there before. What has been the response to the Israel population over there as Trump has helped establish Jerusalem as the capital? So what has the response kind of been over there to those things?
You know, um, it's it's like anything, right? Where there's the few that are mad and the rest that don't really care. You know what I mean? And it's just it doesn't affect their everyday life. It doesn't affect their bottom line, so they're whatever. But there are the radical few that make the most noise, and I think we've talked about it before. And so they're upset, you know. But and even the United States cut funding to Palestine. I think Trump cut like $61 million. I was concerned about that because we go into the heart of Palestine. I'm like, oh, we're Americans. He just took $61 million out of their pockets. That's a big deal. But again, it's the radical few that are the most upset.
All right. Well, today we are talking about time management. And this is something that has burned on your heart lately, Caleb. I saw your Facebook post the other day. It's you were saying that asking the question, do you have time or does time have you? A very interesting question. Time management is something that I have really kind of dived into over the past several years as we opened a business and I'm balancing a full-time work schedule at the fire department and just kind of figuring out where everything falls in and trying to make sure that nothing critical is left undone, but also, where does family and time with God and relationships and all of those kind of things fit into that? So it's really something that has been very important, but there are also aspects of it that I have been very unsettled with. And one of those things is the badge of honor that we seem to wear when we can fit as many things into our schedule as possible. When we are asked to do something, or if we have time to do something and we can respond, oh, you know what, I have to check my schedule, or I'm too busy for this, I'm too busy for that. I don't know about you, Caleb, but I have personal experience with this, and it's not a pretty thing. Not everything that we talk about on here is beautiful, because this is real life. There's some ugly things that we look at, and the feeling of satisfaction or worth and value or validation when I can say, oh, I don't have time for that because my schedule is too jam-packed full with really important things that don't include you and what you want to do. There's just something about that makes a person kind of swell up and say, "Oh yeah, I'm so important. I'm so superior. I can't believe that you have time to do those things. Like, who are you? Bleh. You're just a speck of dust in my world." But it is something to be looked at, because anything that we're getting worth and value out of that is not Christ is an idol. And So we begin to serve our schedules, and we begin to need them and to feel valuable, to feel useful. And when it starts working its way in like that, it becomes part of who we are. It becomes part of our identity. And I'm fairly certain that our identity is not supposed to be rooted in how busy we are or how busy we're not, but in Christ. So the schedules begin to run our lives, and we, like I mentioned, we say things like we're too busy, which I have a personal disdain for. I cannot, I really, there's something that triggers a side of me, really burns me pretty good when I hear somebody say, I'm too busy, or I don't have time for that. Because I know, not to the point to where I'm like angry and ready to punch somebody in the face, but I know that we make time for what is the most important to us. So when we say we don't have time, what we're really saying is that what you are asking of me isn't important enough for me to fit in, because I already have my priorities and I already have my schedule set and I already know what I'm going to be doing, and it doesn't include whatever it is that you want, or it doesn't include this new thing. I'm too busy. No, what we're really saying is I'm not going to make time for it. And that is something that we need to own. Like, if I don't have time for something, it's because I don't make time for it. It's not important enough for me to make time for it. And some of that gets really ugly, because when we look at that and we're realizing what we're excluding from our lives, there are some important things, some things that really should be foundational pieces in our lives that we're excluding, because it's not important enough for us to make time for. And then we can look in at our schedules and realize what we are making time for, and some of those things are really ugly as well. So all around, it's a good conversation to have. But I want to know, because time management is one of those things that often gets looked at as a self-improvement conversation, not necessarily a spiritual one. And so, Caleb, I want to know, does the Bible have anything to say about time management? Did Jesus ever speak on this? Is there any language in there that would give us some insight into time management and how we can better apply principles or improve in this area of our lives? Let me know.
Absolutely. You know, we're in the new and better covenant, which I talk about all the time. And we need to understand that everything that Jesus said is purposeful. Like, Jesus is the Word made flesh. So any word he spoke is important. He even said you'll be judged for every careless word you let fall to the ground. So he's going to live by his own standard. There are no careless words in red. You know what I'm saying? Like, every word he said is extremely important. And at the Great Commission, he said something so incredibly vital. We skip over it when we're not looking for it, which is often in our scripture reading. But first, I'm going to compare it to the first commission, which is for Adam and Eve. He said, he said to them, take dominion, be fruitful and multiply, and take dominion over the earth and the things that crawl on the earth and the birds in the air. God gave Adam and Eve dominion over the earth. Now, that's very important to remember. He gave them dominion over the earth. But there was actually another entity that was that governed the heavens. It was the sun and the moon. They were set in place to rule and govern times and seasons and days and all that stuff, and for times, seasons, and days. And so the sun and the moon were given governance over time. It would tell you how long a day is. It would tell you how short a night is, all that stuff, right? So this, I'm going quickly, but the word is governance. They were the governors. They were the ones with authority. The sun and moon had authority over time, okay, in the first commissioning, in the first creation. And Eve only had authority over the earth. And you might already know where I'm going with this. But in the Great Commission, Jesus said, all authority has been given to me in the heavens and the earth. Therefore you go, make disciples of all nations. So now the disciples, the 12, the 11 at that point, are commissioned with authority not just over the earth, but the heavens and the earth. Now, why is that important? Because in the first, Adam and Eve were only commissioned on the earth. It even says in the Psalms that the heavens are the Lord's, but the earth he's given to the children of mankind. But in the Great Commission, Jesus gave us authority, his authority. It's delegated authority, but all authority in the heavens and the earth. So this is the point of Revelation that if I had more time, I'd really dig into. But here's the bottom line. In the new covenant, we have authority over time. Time does not manage us. we manage time. And I would say it this way, we are actually called to steward time. We're supposed to be supernatural time stewarders. We're supposed to have time stewardship where we take the little that's given to us, like the parable of the talents and all that stuff, and multiply it. Meaning a Christian with this revelation and with this understanding should be able to get more done in an hour than someone who doesn't know God gets done in a day. Because we're supposed to be able to multiply what is given to us, because we have now been given authority in Christ over the heavens and the earth, all of it. The sun should not tell you how many hours there are in a day. Now, I'm not getting super mystical and weird. What I mean by that is you should be able to multiply and use the hours in a day in a much more efficient and excellent way, because you have authority over it. I say it this way all the time. Either you have time or time has you. You get to choose. So I'm with you, Jesse. I will never say again, I don't have time for that. Say, I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to make time for that, or, I'm going to do this instead. Those are much better statements because they're in line with the truth. You do have time. You've been given all authority in the heavens and the earth. This was prophetically seen by Joshua telling the sun to stand still. He stepped into the new covenant, and he told the sun to stop in its place. The sun didn't have to listen to Joshua in the old covenant. You understand? But in the new covenant, it does have to listen to you. And so I'm not saying throw the calendar off, go out there and command the moon. I'm telling you, you should be able to make more out of 1 minute than the world can make out of 10. You know what I mean? We should be able to steward what's given to us in that way. And in that way, we should be stewarding time. And not to mention, I think it was Elijah or Isaiah, they told the sundial to go back. You know what I mean? He told the dial to change on behalf of the king. I think it's Hezekiah, so that would have been Isaiah. And then also, talk about teleportation. Philip teleported. If that's not a time warp, then I don't know what is. You know what I mean? Like Jesus disappeared all the time. You know what I mean? And so if that's not manipulating time, then I don't know what is. So the point is, we've been given authority in the Great Commission in the heavens and the earth, and no longer does the sun and moon have a governance over time. We do. And I've never heard anyone but a guy named Dan McCullum talk about this. So it's just a new idea, I guess. No, that's not true. I've heard one other guy talk about it. But anyway, the idea is that you should take authority over time, and you shouldn't let time manage you. But a lot of believers, they absolutely fall into the trap of time manages them. Time has them because they don't have time. And that just needs to end.
Okay, quick question, maybe a rabbit trail. Do you believe that the sun and the moon really stood still when Joshua commanded it to?
I actually do, because there was a article I read. This is funny. An extra biblical thing proved it to me, which, oh my gosh, I know. What the heck, Caleb? You're the Bible guy. NASA, when they were calculating how to get to the moon and all this stuff and how to put the thing into orbit, they actually kept coming up wrong with their calculations. And then someone said, hey, why don't we calculate that one day that Joshua made the sun stand still? And all their calculations were perfect after that. They actually recalculated with that in mind, and it made everything, it balanced the equation. They couldn't figure it out. Like, this makes sense. This should be making sense. But they calculated that one day where the sun stood still, and it balanced their equation. So for me, I was like, I'll take it. That's proof for me. You know what I mean? So that's why I think it was literal. Yeah.
That is pretty interesting about the NASA angle.
Sure.
For me, I don't know. I have a lot of questions. For one, if the sun and the moon really stood still, what would that have done to nature? I mean, there are what seems to me would be some pretty severe consequences for the sun staying up longer than it's supposed to, or and throwing the moon off of its cycles. I'm not saying I'm not saying in any of this that it is an impossible thing, that God couldn't organize it or orchestrate it in a way that it wouldn't have any severe implications or consequences on nature. But we do know that the sun and the moon are important for seasons and cycles, and so I question that. I question that if it really did, I think that the world would have seen some pretty interesting and significant consequences. One kind of smaller point. It wasn't a very scientific thing to command. uh, the sun doesn't move, the earth does. That's neither really here or there. It's kind of an interesting thing to recognize. But then another thing that I struggle with about that is dealing with the violent portrayals of God in the Old Testament. One thing that it makes me think of is why would God extend a day in order so that people could kill each other longer? That's something that I would wrestle with as well in that conversation. But anyway, interesting story, super interesting story. But I want to know, Caleb, back to the authority that we carry with time management, the authority that we carry over time. How do we take revelation like that and make it practical?
Great question. For me, it becomes a belief issue. So now I wake up in the morning and I believe I have enough time and I have authority over time to handle everything I need to do today. And I believe that if I steward that well, I'll actually create pockets of time where I have downtime. And so practical example is last year, I wrote and produced 3 books. I have 2 books that I have halfway written. I started a church. I went to Israel twice, Honduras once. I, am a father of a 1-year-old boy all year long. I have my wife. I spent family time with them. I have a Sabbath every Monday where I spend family time with them, and I almost never broke it last year. And I only work 6 days a week. I also was working full time the entire year, and I got all that done with free time where I sat down and went, I have nothing to do right now. What can I do right now? So if that doesn't tell you that this is practical, then I don't know what will. I have a testimony of I started believing this over a year ago, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm just going to believe I have time because all authority has been given to me. So I'm going to stop believing that I don't. And it turned into practical stuff. And so I produced a lot. I got a lot done. I started a church. I spent time with my family. I had downtime. And even during the day, right now, we're in the process of purchasing and building, things like that. Before I got on this call, I was like, oh, I've got 15 minutes to scroll on Facebook. I don't have to do anything right now. And I went to 2 pastors' meetings today that were both an hour and a half long, planned long. One went even longer than that. Hung out before and after. I've spent an hour and a half in the Word this morning. I'm not bragging on myself. I'm telling you, this belief will bear fruit if you just start believing that you have authority over time. And you're going to wake up in the morning tomorrow and go, I have enough time. I have enough time. I can do everything I need to do.
Yeah, I think that's really good and valuable insight. I think another thing that we can do that would fall under the practical application category would be for us to just take a few moments to review our schedules and really take a look at what makes up our day on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis. What are the things that are obviously the most important items to us to make sure that we get done every day? So many of us just kind of run through the days influenced by this or that, pulled in this direction or that direction by different things. And before we know it, the day's over and we're not even really sure how we spent it. And for a lot of us, I think that kind of repeats itself over and over and over again. I know that it has. I definitely experienced that in my own life. But I think that if we were able to really reflect on the schedule and what it is that is taking our time and really see if the things that we are giving priority to are building us up and life-giving for us and adding positive things to our lives, or are they destroying us and stealing time from us? It's a question that you're going to want to ask. It's a question that I want to ask. It's something that's going to give you valuable insight into how you're maturing and how you're developing and how you're affecting the people around you. When we look at our schedules and we see that there are things missing in there, like time with God, where does that go? Where does time for relationships with our families go? Is there time in there for that? Not just driving people around, but actually connecting with them. What about relationships outside of the home, friends, and getting together with even extended family that obviously, well, sometimes they do live in the house, but extended family in the area that doesn't live outside. Are we connecting with those people? Are we making time for those types of things. And we know that community and relationship is such a high priority on God's heart. I know earlier you said that you can't have priorities, um, uh, but we know whatever it is, priority. We know that community and family connection and love is really high on the list for God, and that is His heart for us to pour into others. So, are we making time for those things? Where are those things in our schedules? How important are they to us? What about self-time? Taking time to do things that really stir our hearts or refresh us, like reading or painting or music, or whatever it happens to be, whatever your passion and the creativity inside of you sparks, whatever stirs your heart. Where is the time that we're making for those things? Those are important as well. At our schedules, we're kind of wondering, where are those things? And we start finding items like, instead of going to the gym and spending an hour improving your overall wellness and your fitness and bring your hormones into balance and all the beautiful things that happen when we exercise, we sat on the couch for an hour and a half, 2 hours, watching Netflix and shoving our faces with junk food. I mean, it's when we're able to look at these things and to see where our time is going. Another thing is all the activities that our kids can sometimes be involved with. A really good friend of mine not too long ago was talking to me about this conversation of our kids and our relationship with our children and what it means and what we're supposed to be getting from them as far as relationship. He was telling me that things normally went pretty smoothly until he got to the point to where he was telling the group that we are not supposed to be getting our worth and value from our kids. Our kids do not exist for us. And that is really hard to hear for a lot of us, because some of us place such a high level of importance on being a mother or a father, and we should. Those are very important roles, and there are a lot of implications depending on how we do that throughout the lives of our children. But our kids don't exist for us, meaning we are not supposed to be getting our worth and value and our identity from our kids. And what can happen so often is because we feel like if we can give them everything that they want, it makes us better people. Our schedules often become so jam-packed full of kids' activities, we don't have time to do anything else. We're going from one thing to another, and there's no time for friends. There's no time for other family. There's no time for anything but to continuously be the chauffeur to a whole bunch of different activities. So that's another area to look at, and it's okay to say no. It does not move the needle on your worth and value one single bit to say no and say that's enough. You can choose one activity and we'll do that, but that's going to be enough. So I think what we need to do, and a practical thing, one of the most important practical things that we can do is expose the problem in its entirety and really shine a light on where we're spending our time, what it's doing to us. Are these things that are building us up and giving us life, or are they tearing us down and stealing from us? And from that point on, we can move into some other things.
Yeah, that's great. Absolutely. I have a couple more practical things in addition to that. Some principles, like I mentioned, my Sabbath. The Sabbath Rest principle is a time management principle, because it's actually scientifically proven that human beings are most efficient at 80% output and 20% rest. Guess what 20% of a week is? 1 day. So God has built into us this need for rest, and when you prioritize it, and when you get disciplined about it, you will be more effective. I promise you. I fight my team at my church on this. I lead a church called The Resting Place. Hello. So I need my leaders rested. You know what I'm saying? And so I fight for this with them. And I can tell you, the least effective people I know are the ones who rest the least. I'm telling you, they are doing a lot of things, but they're getting nothing done. If you feel like, this is just a challenge to everyone listening, if you feel like you're always spinning your wheels, you never actually get traction, I would challenge you with this thought. I believe that is directly correlated to your intentionality about rest. that if you would rest more, you would win more. The middle of the word wrestle is rest. You take the W off and the end off, it's literally rest. You'll win more wrestling matches if you rest more right in the middle there, if you make it a core value of yours. So it's about rhythms, it's about sustainability, and you're most effective at 80% output. So it's not a religious thing, it's not a legalistic thing, you know what I mean? But it is an important thing that I have Mondays are my Sabbath day. That's my recharge. I don't text Jesse back on Mondays. He knows that. You know what I mean? I don't even, and there's been a few times where, yeah, you can testify to this. And I'm not saying, again, it's not legalistic. If one of my team members calls me or something, there's a crisis, I go and rescue the lamb. You know, like Jesus got on the Pharisees for being legalistic about it. But if it's not an emergency, I don't address it. And if I don't want to do it, I don't do it. That's what a Sabbath looks like for me. If I don't want to do it, I don't do it. And I'm intentional about that, meaning I get everything else done in 6 days. And so there's a little bit of a life adjustment that has to come when you implement that, but it's still worth it. Let me tell you, it's worth it. Try it for 6 months. It will change your life. Get disciplined and take 1 day off a week. It'll change your life. And don't tell me you'll make less money. I promise you, you'll make more money if you take 1 day off, because you'll be more efficient. You're most efficient at 80% output. I'm telling you, this is proven in my life. I'm telling you, email me at caleb@trptampa.com. If you don't believe me, I'll give you more testimonies. But the other thing, the second thing is a rule that I have. All right. And I actually learned it from a sales marketing job I had, and I've just taken it with me and I use it all the time. It's wherever possible, I touch it once, meaning I have a touch it once rule. Every text, every email, every phone call, everything, I'm going to complete the task with one touch. Meaning if I pick up the piece of paper to read the document, I'm not going to move until I finish reading that document, and then I can put it away. And I complete the task. I touch it once. Because a lot of people get their hands on like 10 different things, and they put their energy in 10 different directions, and they're not even always essential things, and they waste their energy and they go very little, they don't go very far. But if you just focus on one thing, the word priorities, plural, is the dumbest word in the English language. You can't have multiple priorities. There's a priority. And the priority right now, for me, is this podcast. And I'm going to focus on this. I'm not going to be distracted. I'm going to touch this thing once. I'm going to complete it. It's going to be over. And that frees up tons of time. So this means I don't open the email unless I have time to read it and answer it. I don't pick up the phone call unless I can have a real conversation. You know what I mean? I touch it once. And so that little trick right there has saved me so much time. So like I have my iPad over here to the side, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, about 18 text messages that have come in while I've been on this podcast recording, and I'm not opening them until I can read them and address them. You know what I mean? Instead of opening it and going, oh, I forgot to respond to you. Da, da, da. You know, that's the lifestyle of many. They're like, oh, I saw the email, but I didn't respond. I'm just so busy. No, you're inefficient. I mean, let me help you. Let me help you. You're not busy. You're inefficient. You can become efficient if you rest more and if you implement disciplines like the touch it once rule. So that's what I have to say about that. Hope you still like me.
Yes, Caleb, I still like you. At least there's one of us out there still in your fan club. So you can be encouraged by that. Thank you so much for spending your time with us here on The Other Side. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes. Leave us a review on iTunes. Follow us on Podbean. You can find us wherever you're listening to us. There should be an opportunity for you to leave a rating or a review, and we really appreciate that. Thank you so much for all of you who have already left reviews and rated us. We really appreciate that. It really does help others find us. Share us with a friend. Share the Other Side podcast with a friend, and really help us spread the word about what we're doing here. Don't forget to send us your questions. If you have a topic or a question that you'd like to hear us discuss on The Other Side, email us at jbirkey@jessybirkey.com. You'll find all that in the show notes. Reach out on Facebook. Make sure you check out our Instagram pages. Check out our show notes for a bunch of important links and information. And we hope that you have a great day or a great night. And we will catch you next time on The Other Side.